Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. It is Tim back with another episode of the River Valley Podcast with a familiar face and a familiar friend, Smokey Joe Pedersen.
Did you almost say digging deeper?
Did I?
I feel like you paused, like you want to say digging deeper, but you did well.
Oh,
River Valley
thank you.
Podcast.
Yeah, well, now I'm going to say digging deeper from here on out, but I might have just paused because I'm a slow thinker.
No.
I'm a quick talker and a slow thinker, and sometimes those don't work out well.
This gets you in trouble sometimes, huh?
It has. It's created a few fun moments. But we are here today on whatever you want to call this podcast. It's nice in here. It's warm out there, so I'm exactly where I want to be. And I'm excited about today's topic. Joe and I were talking, and the goal of the next 30 minutes of this podcast is to give a toolbox, so to speak,
Sure.
right, to parents and grandparents. Because we're talking about kids and screen time. Mm-hmm. And as a parent of an almost 2-year-old, and you have three
kids, 10, 8, and 6.
10, 8, and 6, and screens are everywhere.
Sure.
So this is something that we've kind of gotten into, and so I'm excited. When I was talking to Joe, I call him the Gen Z whisperer. He doesn't like that. He's our youth pastor, so just totally immersed in reading about the generations to come. And yeah, screens are a thing, and they can be great and they can be terrible. So we're gonna kind of cover that. But first, let's just start with the question of why is this a discussion in culture, anyways? So the pros and cons. I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, well, I think Tim and I were just kind of going back and forth with like, man, what's something we should do in the podcast? And I was like, man, I think like talking about screen time usage is such a prevalent thing right now, not just for students, but I think as a society at large. And it's something that we kind of hint at sometimes, like in sermons around here. We talk about a little bit like, oh yeah, like the phone is to blame, or the screens are kind of the problem with our society. But I thought it'd be good to like maybe just spend a few minutes on what's happening really when we engage with screens, and what it's maybe doing to the moral fabric, or what's doing to our families, what's doing to our souls sometimes, and what we're seeing happen into a younger generation and how it's impacting them and the repercussions and some of the benefits it has. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what my motivation was, to like kind of stir the pot on this one.
Yeah, I mean, stats are out there, right? Kids are just spending upwards of 4 to 8 hours a day, maybe on their screen.
Yeah, the average is like 8 hours.
8 hours.
8 hours a day in front of a screen.
Yeah, and as a parent, that's actually gotten quite convicting because those kids are on their screen, and I'm casually looking at them over my screen.
Sure.
And so that was even, as I said, statistics are out there, and one of them was that parents. It was like 1 in 7 teenagers say that one of their parents has their phone out at all times.
Right.
So it's coming from the top down. Being an example, but
it's not just Gen Z or young kids.
No, but and I was thinking about it the other day. Like, if in 10 years Clara has this weird addiction or a thing to screen, that was a response to me putting a screen in front of her. And that was a response to me choosing to give her the screen over blank, I guess.
Sure.
And we can dive into that more, but that's kind of where my head's been at as a parent, I guess, of what the screens are doing.
Yeah, when I say screens, to preface, like I don't think only cell phone or smartphones.
No, I mean,
tablets are a big deal with a lot of students, a lot of young kids. You go on any airplane, every kid almost has a tablet in front of them.
Well,
which,
and
in that sense, I put my kids in front of a movie when we're on the plane. But like tablets, cell phones, YouTube, so that could be on whether you're a smart TV or it could be anything to do with that. iPads, all of it. Yeah, so any screen, not just cell phones. I think sometimes we think screen time, we think of only cell phones. I'm thinking video games. I'm thinking like VR. I'm thinking all of it. So.
Yeah, and no, totally. And I think one thing to even just make a comment on is like, we were already in this pretty interesting battle with screens, and then insert COVID.
Sure.
Where your screen became your school.
Yeah.
But it's also important to point out that screens are involved in classrooms as well. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
sure. There's a lot of benefits to screens, too.
Yeah, there are. So this is definitely not a screen bashing podcast.
Sure.
But as is a lot of stuff, I think things are great in
moderation.
Moderation. The good mediation, too, but that's irrelevant here. but oftentimes it's really easy to tip the scale.
Sure.
So I think our goal today, I mean, Joe, you shared it with me. Do you want to share with the listeners what the goal is as far as these practical?
Yeah, our hope is to like really equip you, the listener, and you, the family, as you're listening or checking this podcast out, maybe as it's middle of summer and maybe you're finding some new rhythms and you're maybe thinking ahead to the next school year, or maybe some new rhythms you want to incorporate to your family. Here's some tools, here's some things we wanted to offer as like, hey, here's what we're seeing, and here's some things that we want to encourage you, maybe some practices you might take on, especially as you enter a new season, a new school year maybe, things that you can have better balance and better moderation when it comes to screen times. So just kind of some enlightenment / hopefully some just tips, some ideas.
Yeah,
Take them or leave them, but yeah.
All right, well, do you want to start us off with what we got?
Yeah, so I think I want to kind of start with like just like what we're seeing in the sense of like there is a problem, and when we get out of balance with screens, right? And there's a reality of that. I think we tease at it, but there is a reality. There's an addiction to screens that we see, and like we talked about, it's not only Gen Z or just the millennials. It's kind of, it could be all of us. It could be the 75-year-old grandma who only knows how to play mobile games on her phone, and and that's what she does because she's lonely maybe. Yeah. And so she turns to the screen for entertainment to numb or to escape her loneliness. It could be the 10-year-old kid who, that's what the one-eyed babysitter, I call it, and it's the thing that his parents just put in front of him, and now that's all he knows is to just scroll through YouTube and watch these crazy videos and play weird games, and then so you can go up and down the age scale of the problem of what we're seeing and the abuse of screen time, and I think that's something that you can't ignore. And the realities of when you say the average for a teen usage is 8 hours a day, that's average. That's a full-time job being on a screen.
Yeah. Well, and how often are you talking to a teenager and you think there's a good chance that 3 to 5 of those hours are probably happening after 11 p.m.
Sure.
10 p.m.
Sure.
So yeah, and where you kind of said the babysitter, I think that's what hits me the most because, again, so we had thoughts about screens before we had Clara. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. And while I think we have a healthy relationship right now with our 2-year-old with the screen, it has changed because allowing her to maybe watch a kid's TV show gives us time to shower, get the day ready for her and for us. I want people to know I don't smell bad. But even, we went out to restaurants and we kind of rolled our eyes at people that have a screen in front of their kid. And then when we wanted 10 minutes
just to talk,
of talking at a restaurant, right? What's 10 minutes in the show? So I know people have opinions on that, but the temptation is that, all right, my life can get a lot easier if my toddler is distracted by that.
Sure.
And what should be happening is I need to be pouring into and spending time with my toddler.
Sure.
So that's a temptation I've felt. Oh, this is so easy. I can do me again. Well, to a degree, I gave that up when I welcomed our child into this world, and in a healthy way. So that's the balance. That's what I really resonate with.
And as they get older, I don't think it gets easier. I think as they get older, they want to be engaged with that screen. Even if you had a healthy balance when they were younger, I think we still see my kids who they don't have any devices personally. Toby, my oldest, he's the only one who really likes to get screen time, we call it. And he has to do his chores and he gets 30 minutes to play video games when he does his chores. That's kind of how it works around our house. But we have like streaming services like Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever. And they'll get to watch shows, right? So one of the things that happens is as they get older, they go, well, Dad, can I just watch another show? Or can I just, let me see your phone. I want to play that little game, that like Crossy Roads or whatever, right? They kind of have to ask for it as they get older because for them, if they're, it can become a pacifier in a way. They then realize like, oh, that's the thing I turn to when I'm bored. Yeah. And I would contend, this is Joe speaking, it's probably not River Valley's stance all the way, but I would contend that boredom is good for kids. And it's okay for kids to have to learn to not have squiggly wigglies at the restaurant. It's okay for them to learn that there's boundaries, like socially, like, oh no, it's okay to have to work through those hard moments. But as a parent, I say that like sitting here without my kids around, but as a parent, it's hard because practically, like you're saying, Tim, when you do need to have that conversation with somebody, but you're like, the little one is just really in our hair right now. It's hard to have the conversation. Let's put him in front of the tablet for just like a movie, right, or a show. Is that evil or bad? Probably not necessarily. My mom put Winnie the Pooh in front of me when I was a kid, and I turned out all right.
Fine,
I'm okay. But when it becomes the norm, that's when I wonder if there's if that can be a little bit dangerous, because it can be a slippery slope, kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, especially when there's TV shows out there that are geared towards how can we get somebody as addicted, like how can we get their brain response as addictive as possible. And so it's working against the kid.
Oh man,
quite a bit. So I think you described that. That's the problem, right?
I think there's definitely a problem. I think we all kind of know the problem. Those listening, we see the problem in our society. We see what it's done in the moral fabrics. We see just the accessibility to information we don't really need to have information to, the accessibility to raunchy and pornographic material that is sadly now way more prevalent than it was 15, 20 years ago before the smartphone. Now we're seeing an erosion. We're seeing erosion in a generation that they're now desensitized and they're way more isolated, and it's sad, and it's definitely hurting our families.
Yeah, and so so what is because I totally agree. There's an attack on the families, absolutely. I think we're seeing it every day. So what does that look like, I guess, in a practical sense, right? There's erosion, there's an attack. Obviously, screens aren't coming out and attacking families, but what are we seeing? What are the repercussions?
Yeah, there's definitely some ripple effects. I think we're seeing that now in a post-COVID era, we're a few years out of the shutdowns and kids being going to online school, but it doesn't change the reality that like video games are ultra immersive, right? Again, nothing wrong with video games, but the ultra immersive, TikTok is not any less addicting than it was before the pandemic. I was listening to a podcast about a kid he's like, yeah, I can only spend like 10 minutes a day on TikTok. But I think it's 10 minutes, but in reality, it's 3 hours because it's a rabbit hole, right? YouTube can be a rabbit hole. So the repercussions of some of these rabbit holes, immersiveness, engagement, and 8 hours a day is we're seeing, of course, mental health is at an all-time low for teenagers. It's a national emergency crisis. And majority of PhDs, social scientists are pointing to the fact that in reality, it's the more time you spend on screens, the more depressed and more anxious you will be. It's almost like back and forth exact. It's just there. So anxiety, depression at an all-time high kind of goes hand in hand with screen time usage. What time of day you spend on screen time is really interesting. Those who spend more time on screen time after dark, so when the sun is set, there's something about the mental capacity, the mental load that you take when you're engaging with the blue light and the different things on a screen. The more time you spend on that after dark or after the sunset, the more depressed and more anxious you are as well. Yeah, really interesting. So it really is messing kind of with your even just at like a physiological level, it's messing with us. So there's definitely some repercussions there. And just the realities of addiction. I mean, it's a true addiction. Screen addiction is a real thing. I believe there's definitely different therapists, psychotherapists who are now working on diagnoses that would say, yeah, you have a real addiction. Your brain is now hardwired differently than someone who's not addicted to this. It's kind of crazy.
Well, no, absolutely. And oh man, I had a thought while you were talking, and I lost it. But so I have a theory, and this was actually I wanted to do a podcast on this alone. Mm-hmm. It was specifically about video games, but I think you can expand it to where so love and respect, Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. He had these acronyms, right? Chairs and couple, and I can't remember all 12 of them, but basically, I think men. It was kind of an acronym to how a man feels respected, and then the couple acronym was how the woman felt respected. Mm-hmm. And I had a theory that indirectly video games were meeting all 6 of those needs.
Oh, sure. Adventure.
It was the adventure. There was a hierarchy. There was the sexual aspect. It was like a video game achievement was I think the A. It's meeting all video games specifically, right? Leveling up, no one's going to play a video game where you can't improve yourself.
Sure.
And so you spend 3 hours in something, you walk away I have accomplished so much. In reality, you haven't. Remember what I was going to say. I knew if I talked long enough. Well, so the Lord created us to be relational people, right? This is another ripple effect. And the phone is creating all these pseudo relationships.
Sure.
Granted, me communicating with you over text, we could have a good conversation over text. But that conversation face-to-face is better. Now we get into and I want to do a podcast on this as well, AI.
Sure.
There are fake friends out there.
Right.
Talk to your AI friend. There's these pseudo-relationships that are replacing it's like putting bad gas in your car. You're going to get down the road, but you're not going to get across the country. So
yeah, isolation's a big one. Yeah. Social isolation. A lot of kids are lonely. I think there's over 60% of kids say that they feel lonely any given day. Just like,
Right.
what?
But-
alone, man.
But they are probably more networked with more people than their grandparents
Well, they have
knew in their
more
lifetime.
followers on Instagram than
Right.
they do,
Yeah.
100%. But they have a hard time conversing about their feelings or about the hard things in life to their closest friends. I'm not saying it's only because of screens, but I would argue that screens are not helping.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, screens are not the devil, but they are
Sure.
a tool that can be used either way. All right. Well, now that we're in Downerville, right? We've talked about the problem, kind of the ripple effects that problem
we
is
see
having.
it.
Let's get to some practical kind of, maybe what's being used in the Pedersen household. Just practical steps that I think how you worded it when we were off screen was like things to try before
Sure.
a screen.
Yeah. Like, what are some things we can do if you're a parent who has little ones or you don't have kids quite yet? What are some things you can do for your kids, or in that young stage? What are some things you can do with kids who are in that pre-adolescent stage? And what are some tips for those who have full-blown like teenagers who have smartphones, who are maybe struggling? And then maybe for the rest of us, even I think some of us will find even just some good practical boundaries amidst all that. Even so, Tim, what about you? Like with Clara, you kind of mentioned a couple things with her being so young. She's probably not verbally saying, "Give me the screen." Maybe she is a little bit, but like, even what are some boundaries you guys put in place when you guys were thinking about it? What were your talking points?
Yeah, pretty minimal for us. And so there's essentially three things that she watches. One, and she actually does Coco Melon. Is she will say Coco. So that got a little. We've actually read articles that maybe Coco Melon is displayed in a way that does kind of create some addictive tendencies.
Sure.
So we are trying to lower that. And then Miss Rachel, who was this
That's
lady.
YouTube?
Yeah, it's YouTube, and she has a 2-year-old son with learning disabilities, and so she wanted more content.
Interesting.
So I'm seeing almost immediate results of her just walking through, say this, say that. Like it's an instructional thing, and then some Disney stuff, but
Sure.
Pretty minimal, right? It's like we shouldn't be losing the battle as far as her with the screens, and so minimalizing it,
Sure.
X amount of times a day, but also something kind of, I don't know, but watching it with her.
Sure.
That is more for the parent, I think, because that combats the whole babysitter thing. If I'm
Yeah.
watching it with her, and if I'm watching something that's interactive,
Sure.
like, hey, now you do this, and the parent's doing it with the kid.
Sure.
I think you're kind of helping that. We're like, if a kid's gonna watch the screen, especially at that young age, watch with them.
Sure.
Because as a parent, I get something on, she's totally involved. Gives me 20 minutes. All of a sudden, one more chore. One more chore.
Yeah.
Luckily, though, where I'm at, and I think the Lord's doing this, after about 15, 20 minutes, Claire's coming after me. If I'm away, she wants to hang out with Dad. Like, that's what she wants to do. So that's been a good wake-up call. So for the little one, the easy answer, if you're going to do it with her, but to that, I would have her watch TV while I would do the dishes. Well, now she seems to be in a point where she wants to grab the chair and do the dishes with me. So choosing that over...
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, do the chores with me. Do them with me, what you can.
She's entering a fun stage. Yeah, she wants to play and she can interact and communicate better. Yeah.
And you know what? Dishes is going to take twice as long, and there's going to be some water on the floor.
That's right.
But it's worth it. So,
Yeah.
Short answer, participate with them or have them participate with you in something else.
I think that's a good point. Even as they get older, I think at all ages, family movie night, there's something healthy and good about that. And in the society that says, oh, watch your own screen, watch your own YouTube video over there. You go play your video games over here. And you go text your friends over there in that room. And everyone has their own screen. There's something beautiful about kind of like, no, like if we're going to have screen time, we're going to do it as a family.
Yeah.
We're going to have the same movie on. Everyone else.
Movie night.
Yeah. And everyone's tablets and phones are put away. They're plugged in or put away for the night. There's something fun about that. We kind of do that. Yeah.
But Rach and I were talking about doing something like that. At an age where Clara stays up a little longer.
Sure.
Kind of a family movie night.
Yeah.
Call it camping, right?
Sure.
So you just build a fort in the living room.
There you go.
Watch a movie. But Clara still goes to bed like 7:30. So.
Sure.
But yeah. All right. So what about that 6, 8, 10 range?
Well, yeah, it definitely gets more tempting to give your kid a screen when they get into elementary school. And we see this in a lot of families, and I'm not bashing a family who's chosen to go this route, to give their kid a phone when they get to elementary school. So we see kids as young as 6, 7, 8 years old with a cell phone, smartphone for that matter, out at the public school. I was at a school recently, and I was like, oh, wow, that kid has a phone. He's going to the bus. Interesting, right? And, the family felt like that was necessary for their family. Okay. They definitely do have some interesting technology is now advanced. Some people have gotten ahead of it a little bit now, finally, where there is some like smart tracker things like watches that a kid can wear that they can actually text from or call from a little bit. They have some dumb phones, I call them, but they're kid-friendly dumb phones. If you want to have your kid have a phone at that young age, there is some things out there that you don't have to give them $1,000 phone from iPhone. You can give them this phone from other random groups. I think Verizon has different plans for that kind of stuff even. So things to look into if you're a parent who's maybe wondering, what should I do? I want my kid to, I want to be able to access my kid and know where they're at when they're at school or when they're at a friend's house, but you don't want to maybe give them full access to that screen. And that would be my encouragement for that age. Before your kid's in high school, I would definitely encourage you to consider what's going in front. What's that content you're allowing in front of them? And you can filter that, parent. You can. There's plenty of great filters now built into Wi-Fi systems in your home even. You can go into the parental settings. You might have to do a little digging. You might have to do some Google research. You might have to watch some videos on how to best navigate that for your family. But you can definitely eliminate adult content on your home Wi-Fi. You can do that even on your cell phone plan at different levels. You can make sure there's restrictions on certain lines or on tablets or on certain, you can turn off devices. Your Wi-Fi can turn off at a certain time of night. You can get into all that now. Most Wi-Fi systems have that.
And to that, I want to encourage parents because I think there can be this pressure of like, oh, I'm that parent. But I remember a kid that was complaining because their mom was the only mom in their friend group that was taking their phone at night.
Sure.
Putting the phone to bed, so to speak. Yep. And I was like, you'll thank your mom later.
Oh, man.
Because they care.
Yeah.
But I think there's that like, oh, no one else's kids are doing it like I'm that parent. You are, and you're going to get hopefully thanked later.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think there's definitely now, I was listening to a really fascinating podcast by Tim Elmore, if you want to look it up. He has this really fascinating podcast about how when you give kids phones earlier in age, the likelihood of them struggling with depression and anxiety dramatically goes up the younger they are when they receive the cell phone. And especially true with girls, they said, because the comparison model that happens at a young age. And so girls as young as 9 and 10 years old, they get a cell phone, specifically a smartphone, at 9 or 10 years old, they will be in the negative percentage of struggling with anxiety, depression, even eating disorders. Basically, you'll be hard-pressed to find a girl, or a young boy even for that matter, who by the time they're in their 20s, if they got a phone at 9 or 10, they'll basically be all odds against them. They will definitely struggle with all the mental health and the struggles of life and comparison and feeling like they're inadequate and struggle with identity and all the things.
And life was hard enough before that, right?
Man,
with relationships.
Sure.
It's like, wow.
So we can definitely control. I think I just want to encourage parents to feel like you can control what goes in front of your kids. You can control time. You can put timers on. One thing we do is we say to a timer, like, hey, timer, set a time for 30 minutes for Toby's screen time. Or, hey, timer, set a timer for this situation. And the timer goes off. And we go, all right, time's up. And everyone knows that's when time is up. So there's some creative ways you can do that. You can and make it fun. It doesn't have to be like this, like, penalty of like, oh man, I have to get up. Well, no, that's just, now we're going to do something fun now. We're going to go outside and throw the ball. We're going to go enjoy time together.
So consistency, right? When that timer goes off, it's done, not 10 more minutes. And also speaking to, we're relational creatures. So I think if you are a healthy, family and you are being intentional with family time.
Sure.
I think a kid is, maybe I'm ignorant, is going to be drawn to that.
Yep.
Like, all right, cool. Family time. Now, if mom and dad hate each other and they're bickering at each other and they're on their phones, kid's going to model that, not want to do that. But yeah, so like it just being intentional with that family time.
Yep.
So, all right, we're going through the age ranks.
Yep.
We are now in the teenagers.
Yeah, so I would say to those families who are listening and you're like, yeah, I have teenagers, Joe. They've already got a phone. They've already got tablets. Here we are.
About it. We have the discussions.
I try to have boundaries, but they push back, or it's been a struggle lately. You're not alone in this. There's definitely a lot of parents who call. I mean, I get probably a phone call or two every week. Hey, Joe, my kid's really struggling, and it's because they have too much screen time, or I don't know how to navigate the conversation with what they're looking at on screen time. Maybe. Again, I think communication wins in this moment, especially your teenager. They're pushing the boundaries. They want their own independence. They want to have their own freedom to choose what they get to have on screen time, how long they get screen time, or how long they get to text their friends. But communicating, right? Being proactive in communication. Hey, this week on Saturday, let's have a digital Sabbath, and let's not but don't tell them on Saturday. Maybe communicate that on Monday. Like, hey, we're looking ahead to this.
And let's all
let's all do it. Yeah, we're together in this. And you parent, again, let's model it. Kind of to your point, Tim. as a parent, we set the tone of what the expectation is in our house. If I'm on my phone every chance I get when I'm bored, guess what my kid's going to do every time they're bored? They're going to go to their phone. They're going to go to their video games. They're going to go to YouTube. And I can't fault them because that's what I'm doing. So we have to pay attention to how we're modeling this, communicating clearly. And again, filters and different things, you can definitely have more control over what's brought into your home. You can protect the digital landscape of your home more than you think maybe. And so I'd encourage you to look into that. And there's some great podcasts and great people who've done this and have studied it and researched it way more than I have. I think of like Andy Crouch, TechWise Family is a great book. He's got some new stuff out even about how to navigate the digital landscape with your kids. He's had teenagers. Tim Elmore. I think of Jean Twenge over here. She's got a book called Generations, which kind of talks about a lot of different things, but lots of good resources out there that I think we can. Hey, parents, check this out. They'll be very helpful for you. Hopefully encourage you to and give you some more practical tips than even we can give.
Yeah, all I was going to say is make sure that you're specific with those podcasts, which you were, because if you're there listening, I'm sure people were writing that down. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're nearing the time because we wanted this to be kind of a quick, powerful podcast. Yeah. I got 2 loaded questions for you.
Oh, boy.
Now, under the context of you have to give an answer, so let's say you're part of a big group. What is the age to give a kid a phone? Question 1. What is the age?
14 and a half.
14 and a half. All right. So, hey, happy 14th birthday, Toby. In 6 months, you're getting a phone. All right. Second loaded question. Maybe that one wasn't as loaded. You answered it really quickly. Do kids need phones?
No.
Okay.
I didn't need a phone. I don't think they need them. I think there's definitely some pros to the connection with family, right? So I could see how you could talk me out of that one. There's definitely like a nice, like, oh, hey, I'm going to my friend's house.
Yeah.
Cool. The nice thing, though, is pretty much every adult in your kids' life has a phone. And if they need to get a hold of you, they could probably ask their teacher or their sub or whoever or their youth leader, like, hey, can I call my mom? Sure, man.
Yeah. I think the maybe the undercurrent or the undertone of what we've been talking about a lot is there has to be intentionality from parents.
Yeah.
You're a lazy parent, your kid's going to love their phone.
Sure.
I know, again, for me, my mom set the example because I got my first phone at 17. Hers was 42 because that's just... But what she did, you talked about that social thing, if I was going over to a kid's house, which now it can be replaced by giving me a cell phone, but she would call the parent, right, and have that connection, like you said. But... yeah, I like the idea of the phone with a few numbers in it and it can't get reprogrammed if that's a reality.
Yeah,
that seems cool with a dumb phone, but that seems like a middle school thing too. But,
sure.
Yeah.
You can do it, parents. I'll say that before you leave. Like, you can do it, parents. You're not alone in this. There's a lot of parents asking these questions. It's been hard. It's been hard learning how to navigate these seasons and how to navigate the landscape, how to be respectful, how to be in the world but not of the world, right, as Christians. And so... be patient, but you're not alone. You can do it.
If you are still listening and you have more questions, if there's enough questions emailed in, we'll run it back. You know how to find us on our webpage. If you do have emails, just let us know. More questions, we would totally answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Joe, I like having you on talking about the youth.
Thanks,
You're
Tim.
a wise man. Listeners, we'll be back talking about something else exciting here in a few weeks. Thank you.